for joining us, and let me know if you can't hear anything or if there's a problem with the presentation, and I will try to correct that as we go. My name is Nick Jones. I am the regional coordinator for the Pacific Northwest and Pacific Basin region, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Region 1. And I just wanted to do a quick overview of our program and also our upcoming update, most importantly for the Hawaiian Islands, as well as the entire Pacific Trust Basin, which includes Hawaii, Guam, Saipan, and all of the other smaller atolls. Yeah. Sorry, is there an issue? Our staff is, oh, I'm sorry. I probably should take the moment to introduce some of our other folks on the call. Our branch chief, Jonathan Finney, is here. Sydney Thilke from the Alaska region is also here with the program. And I did want to thank Carrie Harrington and Helen Rain for helping set up this webinar and doing the outreach. And hopefully this will be valuable to people in the community, and we'll certainly have time for questions at the end too if there's anything that comes up during the presentation. So I just wanted to mention that we are a team of about 14 people in our program. We have 8 regional wetland coordinators spread out across the country through 8 service regions, and then we also have support staff at headquarters in Washington, D.C., which includes our leadership team, which includes Jonathan Finney, as I mentioned, our chief scientist, Megan Lang, and our chief of division and budget and technical support, Martha Ballas Larson. In Madison, Wisconsin, we also have our data center team. They are the National QA Assurance Lead, Rusty Griffin, as well as other folks that manage our database backend and do a lot of other GIS work and IT tasks for us to help all of this make the product work. So the NWI program, for those who don't know, was established through the Emergency Wetlands Resources Act of 1986, which required the Department of Interior to map the location and types of wetlands across the United States. It also directs the Interior to provide Congress and the nation with the decadal status and trends report on the extent of wetlands and deepwater habitats in the United States. Our status and trends reports serve as kind of a yardstick used to quantify policy outcomes and support wetland decision-making across the country. And they also include regional reports, which include the Coastal Wetlands Report and the Prairie Pothole Region Report. Our other mandate under OMB Circular A16 establishes the service to support the production and maintenance of the National Wetlands Data Layer as part of the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. And that operates under the Federal Geographic Data Committee, the FGDC, that oversees that asset. So we do follow all NWI projects that receive federal money, follow several policies and procedures established by the FGDC, as well as, the FGDC establishes standard requirements in terms of spatial accuracy, feature accuracy, and the methods by which it is developed. In addition to the FGDC guidance, requirements, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has established further technical procedures in our data collection requirements and mapping procedures documents that help our map producers understand step-by-step what they're supposed to be producing, what features to retain, techniques to use, required software training, field reconnaissance requirements, et cetera. And all of our data projects must be in compliance with all federal rules and statutes that include fieldwork components. So we must comply with NEPA, the Endangered Species Act, as well as Historic Preservation Act. NWI is now entering its 50th year in 2025, and it has evolved from a collection of paper and acetate maps into a seamless national database. And NWI data for the continental United States was completed in May of 2016. Alaska data is currently in the process of being completed, and that will eventually finally complete the map entirely for the first time. As part of this establishment of digital data set, we were able to standardize and normalize our database, which include water regime restrictions that were based on literature review of wetland indicator species, and also allows for more meaningful searches through SQL queries and identifying wetlands by type and other characteristics. Our data are publicly available via our online wetlands mapper, which includes over 33 million polygons for the entire country. Users can print PDF maps or download data by state or watershed in an Esri-compatible geodatabase format or an open standards geopackage format. Our mapper can also be used interactively to select mapped features, download full map reports that explain collection procedures, base data, any specialized mapping conventions for the project that the feature was mapped in, and also explains geophysical characteristics of the project area. Our data are primarily funded at present through other federal agencies and state entities. This includes EPA, BLM, NRCS, and Forest Service. But as a result, it is the only national wetlands data layer that covers the entire country that is consistent. So, where it gets into the more nitty-gritty, although we are not producing regulatory level information, our data are still valuable component to the environmental review process. Other governmental agencies use our data for planning, permitting, mitigation associated with energy sector and infrastructure development projects, including HUD development grants, and a lot of other sort of high-level reconnaissance first pass assessments for other development goals or projects. One of the other attributes of NWI is in recent years with the development of LLWW, which is also called NWI Plus, functional assessments can be done by adding hydrogeomorphic indicators to the data. And some of these hydrogeomorphic indicators can then be used to analyze things like carbon sequestration, and that is still relatively new and hasn't been maybe explored to its fullest, but that is another aspect of the data that is also part of our process. But as a result of this data, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers estimates that they save approximately about $8.25 million annually through Clean Water Act Section 404 preliminary and approved jurisdictional delineation processes by using our data. Conversations with states have also yielded that they save money using our data for their permitting and application process and planning processes, sorry. So getting back to what the data is and what it isn't, where we differ from the Clean Water Act Corps of Engineers definition. The NWI defines what a wetland is through FGDC classification as features that have hydrology inundated or saturated at the surface for at least 5% of the growing season for most years, and at least one of two characteristics, either hydric soils or hydrophytic vegetation, where 50% or greater of the dominant species are obligate, facultative wet, or facultative. In contrast, the Corps of Engineers, requires all three parameters for their determinations of a wetland. So by that difference, we are a more permissive wetland classification. We're broader by far than what they are looking at. Like the water regimes that we're analyzing, can go down to intermittently, flooded or saturated. So you could have years go by in some cases in like the arid Southwest and places like that. As I said, we use a non-regulatory definition of wetlands, and we're broader than the Corps of Engineers definition. The FGDC wetland mapping standards were established in 2009. They establish rules for horizontal accuracy, where 95% of the features of the feature must fall within. The feature must fall within 5 meters for interior wetlands or non-estuarine and non-lacustrine wetlands, or 15 meters for estuarine and deep water habitats to a 95% confidence interval. Our feature accuracy, presence, and absence is 98%. That's our goal. And attribute accuracy is 85% under FGDC standards. The target mapping unit for all of our projects has a minimum of 1/2 acre, but we will accept projects with smaller TMUs as project objectives and funding allow. If you're not familiar with the coordinate system, it is a hierarchical system. So we establish 5 different systems: marine, estuarine, riverine, lacustrine, and palustrine, which are further refined by subsystem. For instance, subtidal, intertidal for marine and estuarine, which then goes to the class level, where 30% of the feature at target mapping unit is mapped to the highest life form. And then it can be further enhanced with subclasses, as well as water regimes, special modifiers such as water chemistry, soils, special use codes such as farmed, excavated, and pounded. And that encompasses millions of different combinations when put together to try to describe the breadth of the wetlands in the nation. And if you're not familiar with it, it's the coordinate code. And coordinate was established in 1979. Our schema is an Esri-based geodatabase format and produced in Esri software like ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. But we do provide data to the end user in geodatabase and geopackage formats. The producer and coordinator during project kickoff agree on the best imagery available. That imagery must be at least 1 meter in resolution with color infrared available. APE is by far the most common data source that we use, or primary image source. But we do allow for states and other regions with their own imagery programs to be used, where leaf off is preferred if we have it. Other ancillary data that we use to enhance the process include digital elevation models, especially LiDAR where it's available, NHD flow line points, water bodies, other land cover data sets such as CCAP or NLCD, and Google Earth historic imagery is also incredibly useful to our process, being able to cycle through multiple vintages of imagery quickly. During the data production process, we also have a quality assurance plan that must be implemented at the beginning of a project. We engage in an iterative quality control process where we agree at the outset, what deliverables and milestones will be delivered. Typically, that can be 10%, 30%, 70%, 100% until 100% of the data is received and passes not only internal review by the producer, but a 30% review by the regional wetland coordinator and the national QA lead. At the end of a project, there must be a map report that contextualizes the data and provides a narrative for the end user. And this map report includes, geophysical properties for the landscape, any specialized mapping procedures or conventions for the region, And this map report can be obtained through our mapper by clicking on any feature in the web app, and there's a pop-up that will lead you to that metadata report, or you can request it from the National Data Center. And this is where we get into the project at hand. So the scope for this project, for this update, is a complete update of all the Hawaii and all Pacific Trust Islands funded, and is funded through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And it will be mapped by our cooperator, Ducks Unlimited. The island of Hawaii was excluded from the cooperative agreement because of budgetary reasons, but after consulting with our branch chief, we have decided we will be able to map that internally with our own resources. So that island will also be mapped concurrently and delivered at the same time as the other data. The present state of the data in Hawaii and the entire Pacific Trust region is, as many of you know, quite out of date. Most of the mapping was done in the 1970s. Some of it was done in the 1980s, such as Saipan. There are a couple of islands, such as Oahu and Kauai, which were mapped in 2005 to 1 meter color infrared imagery, but the majority of the other mapping was, like I said, done in the 1970s using black and white stereo pairs at a scale of anywhere between 1 to 40 and 1 to 48,000 scale. So it is unfortunately quite out of date, but we're hoping to fix that and make it much more usable and better for the people in the region. So the scope and the objectives for this project, as I said, this is primarily an update. There are many atolls and islands that were never mapped. Those will also be fully mapped as well, but the idea here is to evaluate real change and improve the spatial accuracy and classification accuracy by leveraging high resolution sub-meter imagery that's being provided through NRCS. The dates of that imagery are 2022 for the Hawaiian Islands, down to 30 centimeter resolution. And NRCS has imagery products for the rest of the basin that were acquired between 2016 and 2019, also at 30 centimeter resolution. The timeline of the project, we do have our kickoff beginning in December, but deliverables will be, by agreement, begun to be delivered, a 25% draft deliverable in November of 2025, 50% deliverable in January of 2026, 75% in April of 2026, and then 100% draft deliverable will be submitted by June 2026. And then all final reporting and all finalized data will be submitted by September of 2026 when the contract closes out or the agreement closes out. All submitted data will be reviewed by myself and the national QA lead. So there will be a 30% aerial review of anything submitted to us with each milestone delivery. The mapping project does have a fieldwork component. It is somewhat limited in scope, but that is being augmented by outreach with practitioners and biologists in the region, which is ongoing. So we do have some other people willing to help that process. The fieldwork component does have a goal of no effect, being limited to publicly accessible roads, trails, and right-of-way. So they will not be digging in the ground. They will not be disturbing the landscape. And we have sought concurrence for Section 7 Endangered Species Act compliance to mitigate for any possible disturbance of Mariana's fruit bats through a consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, ecological services staff in the region. Our data producer, as I said, is Ducks Unlimited. They were chosen as the only vendor that we work with that actually has current tropical mapping experience. But they will be overseen by me and by the quality assurance lead to make sure they're complying with all of our standards and that the data is produced in according to the way we want it to be. This is also where we get to where I want to try to involve the community of practitioners and people in the island as much as possible. There is an effort ongoing right now. We're trying to accumulate as much background information on the area as we possibly can. I have a lot of outreach right now with practitioners in the area, and they've been sending me a lot of data, which has been super helpful. And as I said, like right now, we don't have mapping to be begun right away. So we do have some time to try to acquire as much baseline data as we possibly can. And I am also working with our GIS support staff at the data center to develop a 508 compliant web portal where iterative data submittals can be reviewed by interested people in the community. And I will coordinate with people like Carrie Harrington and Helen Rain to try to get the word out when those submittals are going to be open up. And I'm going to try to leave them open for maybe 2 weeks at a time. That is still, we can negotiate that. But again, the idea would be to open this up so people can look at the data as it's being developed, and then also, offer any expertise if they feel that something is missing or an error. Obviously, we're restricted somewhat by, we do have a target mapped unit of 1/2 acre for this project, so we can exceed it if it's reasonable in some cases. And we do know that features like Lo'i and Loko'ia are extremely important to the community, and we want to make sure we capture those as well as we can. So areas that we always have concern with when we're mapping, anything that's under canopy that we can't see, that can be extremely difficult unless there's really good ancillary data, like soils that can tease it out, or high resolution LiDAR can sometimes help us spot those things. But if people want to submit geotagged photos of wetlands, we're more than happy to accept that if you're willing to offer them. If there's any project work in the area that would help support the mapping effort, we're more than happy to talk with you too. So as I said, there are limitations with the photo interpreted product. We always know we're going to have trouble with certain wetland types. So again, if you're willing to offer data, we're more than willing to listen and work with whomever we can. So, and with that, I will open it up for questions. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Nick, thanks for the presentation. I had a question for you.
Sure.
One of the issues with a lot of the wetlands, especially on the leeward sides of the islands, is that they're ephemeral, and it really depends when the imagery is taken. So a lot of times, you'll find that they just don't show up on some of the NWI maps, even though every winter the wetlands fill up and they're super important for water birds. Is there some way to ensure that the imagery from the wet season is used for those parts of the island?
So unfortunately, we're restricted to the imagery that's available to us. But as I said, Google Earth imagery has a lot of scenes that are captured, and mappers do use that extensively to try to identify those areas that may get inundated or flooded outside of the dry season. So we certainly look at that sort of imagery to augment the process. It can be tricky. Like we're sometimes trying to capture something that's on the landscape for a very short amount of time. So again, if you have data or point data or field photos that are geotagged, we're more than happy to take those and try to integrate them into our process. This, like I said, it's one of the limitations of the data is we're always taking a snapshot in time. So.
Okay, thanks. And I guess the only other question or comment would be, you mentioned that there's a half-acre target for mapping
Yeah.
resolution, but obviously there's some really biologically important small wetlands like anchoring pools and things like that, where there's actually been a fair amount of effort to collect that data, using other sources. Is that something that could be integrated in if that data was given to you?
We do have the ability to exceed the target mapping in it. As I said, if we have good data to pull that in and there's some way to easily integrate it, we can certainly explore it. Yeah, we're not going to just cut it off just because it hits that mapping. It's something that we have to sort of be a little bit careful with. We don't want to overrepresent the accuracy of our data. I mean, ultimately, it is a reconnaissance level kind of first pass data set. That again, we want to make it as accurate as we possibly can, but sometimes there are just limitations. But again, if you have like I said, other data sets that you want to provide, we're more than happy to look at it.
Great. Thanks, Nick.
Hi, I'm going to butcher your name probably.
Yeah, Tomoaki. Hello.
Tomoaki. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with
Hello.
UH Manoa. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'd like to follow up with this 0.5 acre target mapping unit.
Sure.
Is this a minimum mapping unit or?
No, it's a little different. But we do a vector-based mapping process. So minimum mapping unit would be more related to like a raster-based process. But like I said, we're looking to map those features down to that level. We do have a little bit of latitude, but it's again making sure we're not over-representing the data, being pretending that it's more precise or more
I
accurate
see.
than it really is. So.
Okay.
Because ultimately the mapper is looking at an image at about 1 to 5,000 on a heads-up imagery display, so they are somewhat limited by the human eye when they're interpreting a photo, in a GIS setting. We do use automated processes a lot of times to pull out open water and things like that. So there are rasters that are fed into most mappers. Methodology includes at least some semi-automation, but again, we're not trying to get down to like pixel level and pulling out 1 meter pixels. It's more about a medium scale landscape level product, I guess is the way to describe it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure. And I see Russell, if you talk to you.
Hey, thanks. Really interesting, great update. I joined you a little late, so I might have missed this, but does this update also include the Pacific Island territories?
Yes. Well, territories. I can go back to the slide if you want to see that. Let me see if that pops in for you. It will be the major Hawaiian islands, the minor islands such as French Frigate Shoals, and some of these other outlying islands. So it will not be, for instance, like Samoa or something like that. But it
Okay.
is,
Yeah, that was my question. Yeah, if it included like Guam, American Samoa. Yeah.
It is
okay.
Guam
Okay.
and Guam, Rota, Saipan, the Marianas. I'm trying to think. The list is a little bit extensive, but most of them are more of the minor atolls and islands. But
Okay.
Saipan and Guam are the big ones. So.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, Haley. Go ahead. You can talk.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. Sorry if I missed this, but what's the best contact if we do have information that we'd like to share or kind of follow up further?
Yeah, sure. I'll put my email address in the chat if people want that, and I will share these slides if people want them. And they are, hyperlinked and things like that. So it does have contact information for me as well as other people in the program if you want to reach out.
Great, thank you.
Well, I've been told to make sure I give people plenty of time to think about things and not try to cut people off. So I'm going to leave it open if people want to ask more questions. I'm more than happy to stick around. But again, if you have a follow-up question and you think of something afterwards, please reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss the project, and as I said, anything we can do to try to enhance the data so we can make it as good as we can.
Hi, this is Carrie. How's it going, Nick?
Hi, Carrie. Good. How are you?
I was just good. I just stepped away for a minute, but then I just saw Chris's response to my chat. Did you respond to how that might be possible about a what is it? How he puts it? Like a systematic data call. Like I know you're requesting data here, but I don't know how we can go about it to get some of these important sites that we don't maybe currently have, readily available data for, how to find that data.
Yeah, like I said, I've been, I have outreach ongoing with several biologists in the region, some other fish and wildlife folks, but I don't know everything. So there's things that I'm not aware of. Yeah, I'm happy to look at it. Like I said, just kind of doing a data scrape, just trying to pick up whatever we can to enhance the process. So just reading the chat here, doing a systematic call.
Yeah, I do think like capturing those ephemeral wetlands is really important. I know, like I didn't even know until a few years ago that the whole area from like a Kumehame up towards like north of Lahaina, I think even that whole area used to be a huge, ephemeral wetland, and maybe some areas year round actually, I believe, and very similar to the Mana, I say that wrong, Mana Plain on Kauai.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's, there are, and right now though, when you drive around, unless you're in the Kumehame area, on the ground looking at things, it just looks like degraded,
yeah, this is the
lowland dry
challenge
forest
for us, is like those degraded wetlands, or just, like I said, we're sort of limited by that snapshot in time. Even if we do look at, historic imagery, it can be kind of tough. I mean, we do, we're laying several data sets together, obviously soils and, land cover, whatever we can get to kind of tease it out. But, whatever you have is if there's more information out there, and that's also part of the reason I want to set up this open comment period where people can actually look at the draft map. And, if you see a thing, oh, this is missing or this should be that. And, so those are going to be a little tricky, but, we want to make sure we're capturing things that are important. So
have you met yet with Arleon Dibben Young?
I have not.
You definitely should meet with her, because and she has a lot of knowledge on Maui Nui, but what I'm thinking is she might be able to share the resources where she found some really cool historical information to really understand, historical wetland information. And she may have ideas on where you can look to get that information for other islands.
Yeah, that'd be
I can
great
introduce you via email. I just think, she's a wealth of information.
No, that'd be, like I said, you don't know where to look sometimes unless you're, integrated in the community. And unfortunately,
Exactly.
I'm not.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, because even if it's, she may have more information for the Maui Nui part, but but again, by doing so, it may enlighten how to get their resources for other places. So.
yeah, for sure. No, that'd be great. And also, like, sometimes if we can tie like an image signature to a particular, like, it might be sort of hard to spot until we see it, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, that's what I'm looking at. And then you can extrapolate that on the landscape. So
yeah.
Hey, Nick, Chris
Yeah.
again. Just wanted to
Sure,
make one
Chris.
follow-up point on the importance of NWI. There's some Fish and Wildlife Service and I'm sure other agency grant programs that require there to be wetlands, at least historically, on the site if they're going to even fund anything for acquisition or restoration.
Right.
And it can be really hard for applicants to find that kind of information if it's not in NWI. So having information on those ephemeral wetlands or smaller wetlands, things like that would actually help a lot of conservation efforts by allowing those folks to move forward and apply for those types of grants that require that kind of information to be included. So just kind of a background thing and maybe
that's great
flesh
to
out
know.
your first slide on uses of NWI. It's important for grant programs too.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Yeah, some of this is like kind of generic slides from other presentations that have been, don't want to overload with the the background on NWI. I know they can get kind of in the weeds sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of us on the call, it's just we also have to make sure we disseminate this, data call to everyone we can think of that might have some data to share.
Yeah, no, like honestly, it's like I said, I want people to feel like it's their map and have a chance to, have input and a chance to make it better. So. Okay, well, I can wait around a bit longer if people have questions that come to mind. As I said, certainly you reach out to me directly. I'm happy to talk about whatever concerns you have or data you might want to share. That'd be great. Yeah, just I want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Nick. That was great.
Okay. Great. I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, do you have a question?
Mahalo, Nick. Just want to say thank you for all your hard work, and I'm excited for this. It's going to be a really great tool when you're finished.
That's the goal. So thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Helen. Really, I do appreciate your help setting this all up. It's been great.
Well, we still got your back.
Oh, sorry, Gordon, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the great presentation. I'm one of the slow people, so I figured I'd raise my hand right as everybody else was probably hanging up off.
No, that's okay. That's totally fine.
And I guess one reason I was slow is that I don't think I have a very well formulated question, or maybe it's a comment. Okay. And it has to do with other water bodies, not wetlands. I know there's a long history. I have been with Fish and Wildlife for a while. I remember working with Dennis Peters on some of the expansion out here, and Elaine Block, your predecessors with the NWI program. And you've got wetlands in your program title. However, you map all water bodies, including shorelines, estuaries, streams, rivers, whatever. And in fact, on your list, the slide that's up right now, most of the atolls, you are in fact mapping shorelines, coral reefs, those kinds of aquatic habitats. And so I guess my question is, are you comfortable that you're reaching out to a broad enough community of practitioners? You've mentioned wetlands. You've called out a few of your contacts that have just come up in this conversation, Helen, Carrie, Arleon. There's a lot of folks that are wetlands experts, but for these other water body types and the classifications that you're going to be assigning with the mapping, do you feel you're reaching out to a broad enough community? And how can we help? I guess the other thing is,
Yeah, that's
how
a good
can we
point. Now,
help?
I do have a call scheduled on Monday with Noah to talk about this update. So, you know, that may or may not completely overlap, but yeah, that might be a good point. Yeah, I mean, if you feel like there's people in estuarine or marine aquatic sciences that would be worth consulting, I'm happy to talk with them for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course,
yeah.
yeah, of course, it's a totally loaded question. I do. So
No, it's okay. It's worth thinking about.
So yeah,
for
hopefully I can make some connections with maybe folks at UH that are working on, you know, geospatial analysis of watersheds focused on streams, that sort of thing. Because I think, you know, maybe on the continent, wetlands might play a, you know, really, really important role in some of the analytical work. And here in the high islands, maybe not the atolls, there are other aquatic habitats that really are of conservation concern, and it'll benefit those of us working out here to have good information, good map products, and good water body classifications assigned to them. So I'll help out where I can.
No, that'd be great. No, thanks for bringing that up. It's good to think about. Okay, well, unless anybody has any other questions, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up. And when this recording is complete, I'll make sure this gets uploaded so people have a chance to access it. I know sometimes in teams with people outside of DOI or Fish and Wildlife, it can be kind of an issue, but I'll figure out a way to distribute that. All right. Well, again, I appreciate everybody's time, and thanks for letting me talk at you for a little while. So thank you.